Welcome again to all the peoples. So, coming on the next session, which is Girls Who Stray. And for this session, I would like to invite with a huge round of applause Anisha Lalwani along with our moderator Chirag Thakkar sir. Please, them you have a huge round of applause for them. Please come to the dais, ma'am and sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for that very enthusiastic welcome. And thank you for having us here, Team Kalinga. I'm very excited that this is the 11th edition of the Kalinga Literature Festival. And we hope and pray that this grows and becomes bigger year on year in the years to come. And what an honor and joy it is for me to be in conversation with Anisha Lalwani, who's the author of her debut work, Girls Who Stray, a novel that I had the good fortune of publishing. Last year, I'm her publisher and editor. And in the course of the next few minutes, we are told maybe 20 minutes, we'll try and dig into some of what this novel is about. And perhaps you could start with you reading a passage from the novel.
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much for coming, everyone. So I'm just going to start reading, like he said. Basically, the bit that I'm going to read is about this young woman who's walking around Delhi, and the Nirbhaya protests are taking place. I don't know if you all remember in 2012, this was the protest against the murder and rape of Jyoti Singh. So it's about this character who's walking around Delhi and she's experiencing heartbreak. She's had a breakup in her relationship, and at the same time the Nirbhaya protests are taking place, so she's watching and witnessing all of that. So I'll just read a bit. Outside, marching in solidarity, the city is boiling. Men and women, children and the old, all castes and races shout at India Gate, spilling across to Raisina. A young girl jumps on a combatant, claws his arms, another bites his shoulder, and is finally shaken free. 10 girls chain themselves to the wheels of a car, screaming for justice. A young man rises from the spray of a water cannon, pushes a soldier to the ground. A river of flames around India Gate all night, every night. Protests erupt around the country as Nirbhaya, the one without fear, is martyred for the motherland. Men grow defensive and wary. Real men don't rape resounds through gullies and mohallas. Women are set ablaze. The whole city, the whole country, now conscious that it has bitten itself raw, that is that it is at its very core a primordial moment of its history. Hamara Enam Mahila Samman in tricolored brushstrokes at the back of an auto. I hail him down, get inside warily. There's a morcha for Nirbhaya Bitya at Jantar Mantar tonight. Aren't you going? I'm taking my daughter and my son too, he says proudly. We're signing a petition and putting it up on Facebook tonight. 3 young girls in the metro. I'll email the draft to you soon. A boy pushes the crowd as the train stops at Rajiv Chowk, cuts conversation, and cries above the voices. Rapists should be hanged till death, urges us all to join the vigil at Pragati Maidan on Friday night, flings pamphlets, and is out of the coach as the doors ping shut. She has become the city's daughter, India's own, claimed by everyone, everyone fighting for a stake of her. Details of that night on the bus, on the internet, um, the TV stations dissecting it all, inflamed the city, where she studied, what movie she was going to watch, which bus she was on, who her boyfriend was, the route the bus was taking, how many times she was penetrated by which of the 6 gang rapists, the iron rod that bore in from behind, a frenzied hand that thrust inside and pulled out something pulpous, something wet, her intestines that seemed to have no end. Fear kicked off the bus into a ditch by the side of the highway because she was dead anyway, and there was no real pleasure in raping a corpse. Not really. But wait, kicked her half dead face again, kicked till she had no eye or mouth or nose, tore her hair out, bit her breast, for a woman running loose with a man in the circus of the night in a city like this did not deserve her womanly blessings. All these details and more to feed the anger, the protest, demands for corrective litigation. Women's tribunals, women's security personnel on the street, a militia of women to drive our taxis and autos. The Indian media, the foreign stations swoop down, broadcast reports across the world. On these nights, Delhi becomes the eye of the storm, the cynosure of the whole world. The city runs riot with its ancient wrath. Out on the streets, every seething repression runs wild. And it is only much later that we will care to think of her as a girl, just an ordinary girl with an ordinary life, studying medicine, just out on a date after college. And it is only much later that we will be able to call her by her name. Jyoti Singh, know her face, the medical college she went to, the dreams she had, the last movie she saw, a fleeting romance of youth. Give her back to herself. And it is only when the rapist stares at us through the camera and says aloud what is known anyway, the often repeated dictum of the modern, moralless girl in a bar, in a disco, drinking and dancing and enjoying her life and showing no qualms about it, a girl out at night on the streets with a boy who is someone other than her husband or brother or jijaji or cousin, a girl who dares to have interests beyond her husband and house, who dares to study and harbor ambitions to make something of her life. Then he blinks, eyes on the interview, the camera still as a lake in winter. She earned her rape, he says plainly. She was asking for it. No decent girl would dare to do such things, he continues, and therefore no decent girl would ever be raped. After all, a jewel more precious than a diamond, if thrown to the streets, will naturally be ravaged by the dogs. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Very powerful excerpt from Girls Who Stray. Copies of the book are available on the first floor in the main venue. If you want, please grab a copy. And Anisha is going to be around for you to sign the book. But for those of you who haven't read the book, will you perhaps set the stage and, without revealing too much, tell us what the book is really about outside, before, and after the excerpt that we just heard?
Sure, yeah. So my book is a thriller. It's about this young woman who gets inadvertently involved in a double murder, and then nothing happens in the case. And that was something that I was very interested in exploring. So it's about somebody who gets involved in a murder, then nothing happens, and there's a sense of guilt and anxiety that's building up in her. So she doesn't know whether to go to the cops. Nothing happens in terms of the cases front. She doesn't know whether to go to the cops. She doesn't know whether to reveal anything. She doesn't know what to do basically, and it was that state which is, I found very interesting to explore. And the case itself is based on a real life case, which is the Nithari Noida serial murders, which was the case came out in 2006, I think. And that case is very grisly. I think there was a documentary on it recently as well. So it's in the case, basically, a lot of poor children, their bodies were found in the backyard of this very wealthy man's house in Noida, in the suburbs of Delhi. And uh, basically, they were from a slum nearby, and the parents kept trying to file FIRs. They went missing, and the parents kept trying to file FIRs. But because they were poor, the cops kept dismissing them. They kept saying things like, "Tum log bacha paida kyun karte ho?" Things like that, and they just did not follow up on it. So for a long time, nothing happened. The parents were just completely clueless. So this period of long time not happening, I thought I could use that as well to explore sort of guilt and anxiety that this young woman experiences. And actually, I started writing this book not as a thriller. I was just very driven to write about certain feelings that I was feeling and that I felt around in my peers. So one was about modernity. So in the sense that, how is social media affecting our psyches, and just this pace of technology and pace of change and the pace of the economy that's moving very fast. And I feel like young people find it very difficult to keep pace with these things. So these kind of feelings and anxieties about the world is what I wanted to explore. And the other feeling was really was what I explored in the reading as well. It's about, this misogyny and patriarchy and all of this, but to kind of sit these very personal feelings at the side by of these very larger political moments. Um, so these were the kind of feelings that I wanted to explore. And I wrote kind of personal essays about the same character. And then much later, I thought that I could try to weave it all together. I could try to bring it all together through the narrative of a thriller. And that's how the novel was born. Yeah.
And I'm glad you did. Um, Tell me, in crafting this protagonist, we have the stories told from the point of view of this one woman, who's this young girl, young woman, fresh out of college, comes back from the UK with a sort of useless degree, and is then navigating urban life, is navigating her parents' divorce, um, and a complicated, messy love affair, and then the crime that Anisha just talked about. What are the aspects that went into creating this messy protagonist? And of course, the other aspect to her is that she's this sort of very sexually liberated protagonist, and yet she doesn't have a name. We call her A in the book. So, how did you go about crafting this woman's story, and what did you base her on? What are the ingredients that went into creating and fictionalizing this woman?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it are my own feelings that I think were buried for a very long time, and I think fiction kind of allows you to process them, but not in a very straightforward way. You know, it's not like going to a therapist or something and you process it in that way. It allows you, I think, to process things in a very interesting way. So you can create something, you can literally like sculpt something. That's the way I think about it. A lot of it were my own feelings, and then just conversations with friends, men and women through the years. So for example, like I spoke about, you know, the anxieties about the modern world, or just feeling like the world is moving at a very fast pace and you can't quite understand. You're trying to keep pace with things, but just the economy is moving so fast. These kind of feelings, you know, I felt were very common, but hadn't really been explored with too much depth in Indian fiction. um,
Could we ask the volunteers to keep it down, please, so that we can continue this conversation? Thank you. No problem.
and then yeah, so my character goes abroad to study. She goes to the west to study, and I think a lot of privileged Indians do go abroad to study, but I really wanted to write about her.
They would like to ask Anisha, uh, try and keep these to brief questions. Any questions you have for the author, we're happy to answer. And in the interim, while you guys think of questions, I'll add one. Uh, what are things about writing, the preconceived notions about being a writer, being a published writer, about being received and the reception of a book? What were some perceptions that were shattered? What are things you learned after publishing your first book?
Uh, I think I think that what I have learned is that you really need to go out there, post the books getting published as well, because at the end of the day, it's your baby. You are very emotionally tied to it, like nobody else can, right? Like the publisher will do everything they can in terms of marketing, and your friends will and stuff. But at the end of the day, you really have to push yourself, and you really have to go out there, and nobody can feel for your own book as you do, right? Like that's an obvious thing. So you really have to put yourself out there. I think authors tend to be a little bit introverted and a little bit shy and stuff, but you have to really get out of your shell and really try to push things. So this is something that I
You
have learned.
learned that you're the
Yeah.
master of your own story even after it's out and
Yeah,
help sort of
absolutely.
make it fly in the world.
Yeah.
And to people who haven't yet sort of published their books, and young writers, emerging writers, even middle career writers who've held that dream close to their chest but not really sort of put it out there, do you have any advice you'd like to give them in terms of the ethic of writing, the craft of writing, on techniques in
Mm.
general?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of techniques and stuff, I don't want to say too much because there's a lot of really good advice, and I think each person's project is so different and so personal to themselves. But I just say that it's probably extremely hard. It's a very lonely thing to do, right? Because you're sitting, for years. Like he said, it took me 8 years to write this book, and in the middle, I gave up for many years. I lost faith. It's not like I was sitting on it every day, of course. I lost faith for many years. You get distracted by so many other things. Life happens, right? You have to have a job, you have to have family, so many other things happen. But eventually I came back to it. I would just say, have faith in yourself, have faith in your voice, read the greatest, read challenging books that make you think, and all of that will kind of filter into your subconscious while you're writing, and try to do something different, right? Like there's no point attempting something that other people have done. Even if you admire another writer, there's no point kind of mimicking that. You have to try to break new ground. That's why it's called a novel, right? Because it's something new. That's why it's novel. So try to do something new, and have faith in yourself, and yeah, that's about it.
I hope you're making note of all her suggestions and tips. Do any of you have
Yes,
any questions
sir.
you would like to ask? Yeah.
हेलो मैम, आई एम देवी प्रसाद मैम। एज यू अब जो डिस्कस के गर्ल्स हिस्ट्री एंड जिसके ऊपर मैं अभी भी लिख रहा हूँ, आप जो कन्वर्सेशन अभी चल रहा है आप दोनों के बीच, सर एज ए बॉय मैं आपको ये कहना सवाल है कि जो वुमेन सेंट्रिक का जो आपका पुस्तक है जो अभी उन्मोचन हुआ है, अब जो अभी आया भी है, तो उसमें पुरुष तो जो स्टेरियोटाइपिकल माइंडसेट जो है, तो इसी के ऊपर क्या चर्चा किया है इस पुस्तक में, इस बुक में, कि किस तरह से ये बुक का सीधा असर एक जो एडल्ट बॉय जो ग्रोन अप हो रहा है, जो जैसे मैं 2012 में दिल्ली में जो हुआ, हम सब देखें उस समय मैं स्कूल में पढ़ रहा था क्लास 6 में, तो उस समय हमको तो टीवी देखने के लिए भी अलाउ नहीं था उस समय कि क्या उसका असर मतलब बुरा पड़ेगा या फिर क्या होगा। इवन जब वो फांसी के समय भी जब वो लाइव टेलीकास्ट हुआ था, हमारे घर में बोल रहे थे कि इस चीज़ों में तुम कुछ मत सीखना, तो यू डोंट नीड टू सी टेलीविज़न। तो इस जो पुस्तक में आपका जो गर्ल्स हिस्ट्री में, तो इस मानसिकता को परिवर्तन करने के लिए स्पेशली युवाओं का क्या मतलब कंटेंट है
It's a
इसमें?
very interesting question. No?
Yeah.
How boys are being raised, and
Yeah.
how men are likely to receive a book like this and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, no, so thank you very much for that question. So I don't think कि मतलब मैंने ये पुस्तक नहीं लिखा है कि मतलब मानसिकता चेंज करने के लिए, या I don't think novels are written really to teach anybody anything, or it's just to delve very deeply into the ways we think, and to explore that. It's not to show that ये अच्छा है, ये बुरा है, ये लोग ऐसे करते वैसे करते. It's not about that. It's just to explore things at a very deep level. And I have not shown men in a bad light or anything like that, right? These issues are so much bigger than that. So it's to explore the complexity, really. It's not that I have shown men are bad and women are good, or women are bad and men are good, or anything like that. It's just to explore the complexities in the relations between genders, which is so kind of nuanced, and there's so much underlying pain and violence as well. So these are the kind of things that I wanted to explore. Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions? Yeah, we have a question in the front row here. And after you, is there anyone else who wants has a question? We have time for one more at best after you.
It's just not a question. Two words for that. All the best, ma'am, for your book, and I wish your book sells very good. Uh, in fact, I was staying near Nithari, sector 36, Noida, and very near to me. I mean, hardly 50 meters away. I could see that place where all the place guys were uh, all the day and night. They were eating, and I had seen the skulls and other things coming out of it. It was visible through my window. I was working for CSC as a software engineer at that point of time, and I had recently came back from UK, and suddenly I was thrilled by this event, and this is such a thing happening very near to me. And we were really thinking about it, whether it is a uh, sexual stuff attempt or it is intended for any particular organ trafficking and all. And we were mostly concluded with the organ trafficking part, but things dragged and it went into some other direction. uh, in fact, what I want to understand is your book is about Nirvaya or some particular girl, or it is about many other girls as well? Does it depict a lot of stories or only single story?
So my book is not about Nirbhaya or Nithari. It's about this young woman who I have just titled A. She gets involved in a crime, and the crime is based on the Nithari case. I've not clearly mentioned anything, but it's based, like what happens in the crime that happens in the book parallels very closely what happened in the Nithari case. And the Nirbhaya angle comes where the only time it really comes is when she has experienced heartbreak and loss, and she has experienced misogyny with her lover, and she's walking around Delhi and she is thinking about her own heartbreak and her own misogyny. And at the same time, the Nirbhaya protests are taking place in Delhi. So, the Nirbhaya protests make her think about kind of the broader political ramifications of misogyny, right? Where, so she thinks about her own loss, and at the same time, there's this much broader political moment. That's when I bring in the Nirbhaya case. So
It is basically about the psychology of a lady and a
it's
lot of
about,
since,
yes.
and it intensifies since many of such events are happening around.
Yeah,
Like,
I've taken these real life cases and these real life situations, and I've put them through in my novel because it's based in Delhi, and I wanted to explore these
And
aspects
it's
of it.
based in that time. So
Yeah.
while that's happening in the city, parallelly, there's something happening to someone's lives in their interior lives. And in the exterior, there is something else happening, right? So you cannot remove the exteriority of some characters from the interiority of their experience. One other question, and then we have to wrap. Yeah, we have a gentleman here on row one, and I promise we will wrap after that. Okay, let him have his question, please.
Hi. When you're writing in a language that's not native to country, then you are actually walking into the domain of some other countries as well. How do you figure it out? Like, how do you differentiate yourself from the people who use English as their native languages? What differences do you bring in?
So I wouldn't say I wouldn't say English is not necessarily a language, because I do think that a lot of Indian writers writing in English, we have really Indianized English, and I think it's about time we do that. That has happened a long time ago. So I haven't written it in the sense that this is a foreign language, or it just written English in the sense that it's just because, like, for example, I speak in English at home and I have grown up speaking English, and of course it's interjected with Hindi. I'm from Mumbai, so we speak Marathi, English, all of that. So similarly in this book as well, because it's based in Delhi, there are so many little aspects of Hindi that are brought out. So for example, in the passage that I just read also, she reads the slogan which says Hamara Inam Mahila Samman at the back of an auto. And I remember reading that during the Nirbhaya protest when I lived in Delhi, and so I brought that in. So I don't think really English is a foreign language, or it. We've reached the stage where now English is very much part of our sort of colloquial for a certain group and a certain elite, definitely
Yeah.
group of people.
And to
Yeah.
add to that, you know, one of the things about the English language is that it came here through the colonial project. It came here through our histories of the empire and the histories of the imperial British sort of Raj. But what the colonized do is that they take the tools of the master, they take the tools of those that are controlling their resources, controlling their people, controlling their place, and then you fight the master back in the master's language, right? So then Indians teach themselves the art of the English, and they sort of, and then the 20th century nationalist movement, all the leaders that emerge are able to sit at the same table as the colonial sort of viceroys and governors and the king and the queen later and negotiate with the British through English. And like Anisha was saying, then we make English our own. So it no more remains the colonizer's language. You take the language from the colonizer and you make it your own. And now, in the context that we live in the context in which Girls Who Stray has been written and published, English is no more a language of the colonizer. It's the language of the world. It's the language in which we transact with the world, interact with the world, and that allows for a greater sort of exchange of cultures. So many great voices in literature in so many parts of the world we would not have had access to, but for the translations of these books and great voices that were made available to us through English. So I think English is very much our own, very native to India, and we do with it what we do in a chutney, in an achar, in a khichdi. We kind of put our own spin, our own twist to it, and that's beautiful for us to publish, read, and write. Thank you, everyone, for attending this session. A round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
you.
sir.
for-
Thank you very much, ma'am. And really, I would say that listening you would really inspire young writers. Now, I'd like to invite Devabrata Das, sir, to felicitate Anisha Lavlani, ma'am, and Chirag Thakkar, sir. Please have a huge round of applause for Anisha Lavlani, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for making time for us. We are really very grateful to you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for making time for us, ma'am.